She walked into the courthouse 2 months earlier wearing white. Smiling. In love. The man beside her had promised forever. 60 days later, her body was found riddled with 12 gunshot wounds, crushed under the weight of the same car he once drove her to dinner in. What could drive a man to murder the woman he'd just sworn to protect? And why didn't anyone see it coming? Stay with us. The answers are buried in the details. If you're new here, subscribe. This is one story you'll want to follow to the very end. He stood at the altar with calm eyes. Hands steady. Jaw firm. His voice didn't crack when he said, "I do." The room had only a few dozen people, mostly her friends, mostly her family. They said she glowed that day. She had always been the soft one. The gentle one. A woman who taught second graders how to write their names, who left homemade cookies on her neighbor's porch without ever ringing the bell. Her name was Tiana Brooks. She was 28. And she believed love was something you could grow into, even if it started fast. He was Malcolm Pierce. 35. A truck driver with no prior record, no known outbursts, no loud arguments in public. There were no red flags that jumped off the page. No history of violence. No scars she ever mentioned to her sisters. Just a man who said the right things at the right time, and a woman who wanted a fresh start. 2 months later, she was lying in a pool of blood in the parking lot of her own apartment building. Shot 12 times. Each bullet placed with purpose. Her body broken beyond recognition after being run over. The tires didn't screech. There was no hesitation. He didn't run. He drove away. Neighbors stood frozen. The woman who once passed out warm cornbread during the holidays was now being zipped into a black bag on the same ground where children played hopscotch just days earlier. No one understood. And maybe that's the part that's hardest to accept. She married him. She chose him. And for 60 days, they shared the same bed. Ate from the same kitchen. Laughed, maybe even danced in that living room with the fairy lights she hung herself. This was not a story that unfolded slowly. There were no warning sirens blaring into the night. No clear build-up. Just silence. Then violence. And now, we're left with one question. Why? Why would a man hold a woman in his arms 1 week, then hunt her down the next? What changed? Or was it always there, hidden under the surface, masked by politeness, cloaked in quiet? This is the story of how a wedding turned into a murder scene. How two people stood in front of God, family, and the state of Louisiana, and made a promise that one of them never intended to keep. This is the story of Tiana Brooks. And you need to hear every piece. Tiana met Malcolm at a crawfish boil hosted by a friend of a friend. It was late spring, just warm enough to stay outside all night without a jacket. She was wearing her hair in a twist-out, gold hoops, a smile that made people want to keep talking. He noticed her across the yard, offered her a drink, and the rest, as people say, was history. But history is never that simple. From the outside, it moved quickly. A few weeks of late-night phone calls. A few dates. Then a vacation to Houston where, according to her best friend April, Tiana came back glowing. She called Malcolm steady. Said he was quiet, but thoughtful. That he brought her medicine when she was sick, showed up when he said he would, listened without interrupting. Malcolm worked long hours driving freight between Louisiana and Texas. He didn't drink much. Didn't post on social media. He liked gospel music and old R&B, said he believed in doing things the old-school way. When he proposed, it wasn't on one knee. He asked her at her kitchen table. Over catfish and grits. She said yes before he finished the sentence. They married at the courthouse on July 10th. Her mother came. Her sister cried. His side of the room was smaller. Just a cousin and an older woman people assumed was his aunt. No wedding dress. Just a cream suit and sunflowers in her hair. She said she didn't want to wait. That she'd waited long enough to be loved the way she deserved. Their first 2 weeks were quiet. Sweet, even. Tiana posted a picture of them on the couch, his arm around her, her feet in his lap. She captioned it, "Peace looks like this." Her students started calling her Mrs. Pierce. She baked him a cake for his birthday. He bought her a silver chain with their initials engraved. But the sweetness didn't last. 3 weeks in, she started arriving to work late. Tiana had always been early, always. Her co-workers noticed she stopped bringing lunch. She didn't talk about Malcolm as much. And then there were the texts to April. One at 2:12 a.m. that read, "I feel like I'm shrinking." She missed a weekend brunch. Didn't answer her sister's calls for 3 days. When they finally got her on the phone, she sounded tired. "Just adjusting to marriage," she said. "It's nothing." It was something. In the school parking lot, a teacher's aide saw Malcolm waiting in his truck. It wasn't just once. It was often. He never smiled. Never waved. He would just sit there. Watching. Then came the Google search. Tiana had typed, "Can you annul a marriage after 30 days?" She never told anyone about it. Investigators found it in her browser history after everything was over. Alongside searches like "signs of emotional abuse" and "how to safely leave your spouse." On the night of September 8, she made a decision. She packed a bag. Left a note for her sister. Drove to her best friend's house and said, "I need to stay here tonight. Just tonight." But she never made it. According to security footage, she pulled into her apartment complex around 9:47 p.m. Her brake lights stayed on for almost 30 seconds. Then they shut off. She never made it out of the car. Malcolm's truck was already there. What happened next took only 3 minutes. A neighbor heard shouting. A scream. Then silence. Then gunfire. 12 shots. Each one fired with the pause of someone making sure they didn't miss. The final blow wasn't from the gun. It was the tires. Tiana's body was found beside her car. Her phone, shattered. Her keys still in the ignition. Blood pooled across the concrete. One of her shoes, thrown 20 feet from her body. Malcolm didn't call 911. He didn't stop. He fled. The next morning, the city woke up to headlines. Wife murdered in cold blood, suspect at large, her school cancelled classes. The kids left handmade cards outside her classroom door. Her desk still had a lesson plan for Monday. It would never be used. Police traced Malcolm to a gas station off I-10. Surveillance caught him buying a burner phone and a pack of cigarettes. He looked calm. The cashier said he was humming something under his breath. He dumped his truck near the Atchafalaya Basin. Then disappeared. 17 days passed. 17 days of search parties, tearful press conferences, and tips that led nowhere. 17 days of a mother begging on live television, "Malcolm, please turn yourself in. Please. Let my baby rest." On the 18th day, U.S. Marshals found him in Mississippi. He was living out of an abandoned RV parked behind a mechanic shop. He didn't resist. Just raised his hands and whispered, "It's done." In custody, he said Tiana was going to leave him. That she made him feel small. That she didn't understand the kind of man he was trying to be. He said, "She embarrassed me. She made a fool of me." He never asked if she was still alive. He knew. At trial, he pled guilty. Life without parole. The courtroom was packed. Tiana's mother brought the chain he gave her. Held it in her palm as the sentence was read. Her father spoke. "You didn't just kill my daughter. You killed every version of her that could have existed." The judge asked if he had anything to say. Malcolm said, she wasn't supposed to leave. Those were his last public words. Today, a mural of Tiana sits outside the school where she used to teach. Her students leave flowers there. Drawings. Crayons. A sign that reads, "Miss Brooks loved us. She did. And now she's gone." All because a man couldn't understand that love is never control. That marriage is never ownership. That, "I do," never means, "you're mine." This is the story of Tiana Brooks. And it must never be forgotten. The courtroom was quiet when the sentence was handed down. Life without the possibility of parole. No reaction from Malcolm. He didn't flinch. Didn't look at the family. Just stared straight ahead, jaw locked, eyes hollow. There were no last-minute tears, no apology to the mother sitting in the front row with tissues balled up in her hand, her chest rising and falling with the weight of a grief she would carry for the rest of her life. After the sentencing, Tiana's sister, Keisha, walked out into the hallway and collapsed into a chair. Reporters waited outside the courthouse, their cameras ready. But no one from the family spoke that day. There was nothing left to say. But the story didn't end in that courtroom. In the months that followed, pieces of Tiana's life slowly emerged. Stories from co-workers, text messages she never deleted, voice memos she recorded on nights she couldn't sleep. Her voice, soft and uncertain, captured fears she never said out loud. In one recording, made just 12 days before her death, she whispered into her phone, "I feel like I'm being watched, even when I'm alone." Friends later testified to seeing bruises she explained away. A small cut on her lip she blamed on a fall. A change in the way she dressed, sleeves longer, necklines higher. She had started withdrawing from people, declining invitations, avoiding family dinners. Her light was dimming, one day at a time. April, her best friend, said she once heard Malcolm yell through the phone. Tiana had gone silent, then hung up. When April asked her what was going on, Tiana smiled and said, "He's just under pressure from work. You know how it is." But people close to her began to wonder. There were signs. They were just small. And like so many stories of domestic violence, those signs didn't look like what people expected. No hospital visits. No police reports. Just silence. Fear. Isolation. The investigation after Malcolm's arrest uncovered something else, something chilling. This wasn't the first time. In 2017, Malcolm had been briefly engaged to a woman in Houston. She had filed a restraining order just 3 months before the wedding. Claimed he became controlling, verbally abusive, would follow her to work and demand to see her phone. But the order was dismissed. She moved. Changed her number. And never looked back. Her testimony wasn't admissible in court. But the detectives knew. And now, so did everyone else. Tiana's family started a foundation in her name, the Light Project. Their goal, educating women on the signs of coercive control, emotional abuse, and how to recognize danger before it turns fatal. The foundation provides counseling, temporary housing, and legal support for women trying to leave toxic relationships. Her classroom remains untouched. A quiet tribute to the life she built, until it was taken from her. In the hallways of her school, kids still speak her name. Her favorite color, mustard yellow, is now the color of the ribbon worn during Domestic Violence Awareness Month in her honor. Her picture, framed near the school library, is more than a reminder. It's a warning. This story is about more than a murder. It's about the spaces between the lines. The silences we overlook. The moments when someone we love changes, dims, withdraws, and we chalk it up to stress. To life. To marriage. Tiana never had the chance to start over. She never got to move out, begin again, or write the next chapter of her story. Malcolm didn't just end her life. He erased the future she was building. But in her name, her family fights to make sure no one else disappears quietly. Because violence isn't always loud. It doesn't always knock down doors or shatter glass. Sometimes, it whispers. And if we're not listening, we miss it, until it's too late. So, ask the hard questions. Check on the quiet friends. Trust your gut. And remember Tiana Brooks. A teacher. A sister. A daughter. A woman who deserved a lifetime, and got 60 days. Her funeral was held on a rain-soaked Saturday morning in August. The sky matched the mood, gray, heavy, unforgiving. Hundreds gathered. Students, teachers, family, people from the community who never knew her name before the news broke but were now shaken by how close it all felt. There were no empty seats. Just silence, the kind that wraps around a room and holds every breath hostage. Keisha stood at the podium, trembling as she read a letter Tiana had written to her years ago, back when they were just kids sharing dreams in the back seat of their mother's car. In it, Tiana wrote about wanting to travel, teach children, and fall in love with someone who made her feel safe. The irony stung like salt in an open wound. After the service, people whispered about the trial, about the short marriage, about how quickly it all unraveled. Some called it a tragedy. Others called it evil. Everyone called it senseless. What wasn't publicly known until months later was the full extent of the surveillance footage investigators had collected. Video clips from traffic lights, convenience stores, and street cameras painted a timeline with precision. Malcolm's car circling her block late at night. A shadow moving past her window hours before dawn. Gas receipts from a station 2 counties over, places he shouldn't have been. But what chilled detectives most were the internet searches found on Malcolm's phone. How many gunshots to kill instantly? Can text messages be recovered after deletion? How to prove your wife is cheating? There was no cheating. But that didn't matter. Tiana had applied for a new teaching position out of state. She had an interview lined up the week after her death. She never told Malcolm. Friends say she was scared he wouldn't let her leave. The medical examiner's report detailed every wound. 12 gunshots. Each one fired at close range. Then the impact of the car. She had already stopped breathing by the time the tires rolled over her. In the police interrogation room, when asked why he did it, Malcolm said nothing for 5 hours. Then, as if shrugging off the weight of a decision that took a woman's life, he whispered, "She was slipping away from me." He said it like it was a reason. But no reason will ever make it make sense. Journalists who covered the case spoke of a man who seemed empty inside, polite, composed, cooperative. As if none of this ever happened. As if his 2-month marriage hadn't ended in murder. He never wrote an apology. Never looked Tiana's family in the eye during trial. And to this day, he has never spoken to the press. Years have passed, but her story continues to echo in schools, shelters, and courtrooms. Her case is now part of training seminars for law enforcement, used to teach officers about the red flags that don't always show up in bruises or broken windows. The Light Project now works in 4 cities, with plans to expand. Survivors have come forward. Some said hearing Tiana's story gave them the courage to leave. Others admitted they had been in relationships just like hers, quietly dangerous, quietly suffocating. Tiana Brooks is gone. But her voice is louder than ever. A documentary aired on the 1st anniversary of her death. It included childhood videos, her in braids, giggling at a birthday party, teaching her little cousins how to spell their names. It ended with footage from her classroom. An empty desk. A drawing on the board that read, "You matter." Because she believed that. She told her students that every day. She lived it. And in her memory, it's a message that refuses to die. Her story isn't just about how she died. It's about who she was. And how the world lost her before it ever really got to know her. So now we ask the questions. What would have happened if she left sooner? What if someone had said something? What if love never turned dangerous? What if she were still here? And more than anything, what are we doing to make sure no one else becomes a headline? This isn't just a story of love gone wrong. It's a story of fear misunderstood. Of control mistaken for care. Of warning signs dismissed as mood swings or stress or tension. It's about the words never said. The questions never asked. And the help that came just a little too late. But even now, her story is helping others find their voices. Women have reached out to the foundation saying, "I left because of Tiana." Teachers now receive training to identify abuse in coworkers, not just students. And schools in her district now have wellness checks built into their HR policies. Because of her. Because of a woman who wanted to be a light. Who still is. And as her sister once said, they took her body. But not her purpose. Tiana's story is far from over. It's written now in the hands she's helped set free. If Tiana's story moved you, don't let it end here. Ask the hard questions. Have the uncomfortable conversations. Share her story, not just to remember what happened, but to prevent it from happening again. If you or someone you know is in an unsafe relationship, speak up. Reach out. There is help, and there is hope. We want to hear from you. Do you think more could have been done to protect her? What warning signs do you think were missed? What's your take on the justice system's response? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let your voice be part of the change. And if you want to hear more stories like Tiana's, stories that deserve to be told, stories that shake us, stories that matter, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video if it opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because silence protects no one. And remembering her, remembering all of them, that's how we fight back.